All right, Trey Lance had surgery on his ankle this morning, so the dust is settling after the shock of yesterday, and it's time to just have an honest conversation about what this season ender means for Trey Lance's development. Well, first of all, he's out for the season, so it's terrible news for the long term as far as getting Trey Lance ready to play at the NFL level. Remember that he played a full season in 2019, but at a low level of college football, North Dakota State. And then 2020 was wiped out, COVID year. He only played one game there in that abbreviated season. 2021, he was obviously learning behind the scenes with the 49ers. So 2022 is going to be Trey Lance's first time in several years getting an extended bill of action. But this injury takes that away from him. Only 318 career passes in college at North Dakota State. And again, at that lower level. So the 49ers entered this season talking about developing Trey Lance as a pocket passer. And the main thing that he didn't have, because he had the brains, he had the athleticism, it was the mechanics because of those lack of reps that the 49ers needed to establish. And the mechanics, those need repetition. So this is a big setback in that regard because he's not going to be able to work on the mechanics while he's rehabbing. So you essentially push everything back at least a year for Trey Lance, because that 2023 season now is, on the rehab calendar is going to be his first chance to start working on those mechanics again. However, the pressure cooker might be diminished a little bit when he comes back from 2023, because sometimes when guys are coming back from injury, the expectations are not as unreal. We don't know what's going to happen with Jimmy Garoppolo moving forward, but maybe from a pressure standpoint, maybe from, if there was some cerebral fine-tuning to his game that Trey Lance needed to do, maybe this injury can help him in that regard. But I think that the big loss for the 49ers comes through the fact that his rookie contract window is going to be over 50% done by the time that he returns in 2023. It's really, a rock and a hard place now for the 49ers with Trey Lance, and we're going to have to see how this future develops. That came about because Trey Lance was thrust in between a rock and a hard place. You think about his development, and you see a guy with a profile like Trey Lance's, right? Absolutely raw quarterback, somebody who's coming out of a small school who needed a lot of refinement time from the pocket to develop the mechanical nuances of his game. Well, if he had been drafted to a bad team, somebody like the Jaguars, of Trevor Lawrence right now, then Trey would have been able to learn on the fly, but it within the pocket, because the Jaguars are okay with Trevor Lawrence making his mistakes from the pocket last season. They didn't have to expose him, I think, unnecessarily to some runs that could injure him. But the 49ers, I think that they were in a situation where the roster was too good to let Trey Lance make the necessary mistakes from the pocket, because they would have damaged this team's Super Bowl chances. So they tried to walk a tightrope. They tried to develop Trey Lance, but accentuate what he did well in the short term, which was running the football, some of those runs in between the tackles, and that increased his injury risk. That ended with him getting hurt. I mean, Kyle Shanahan himself, even though he might not talk about it very much right now, he might not acknowledge it right now. There's a quote 51 weeks ago. Ed Werder posted it on Twitter where Shanahan said you can't just run quarterbacks in between the tackles these days. NFL defenders are too big and strong. But to balance the competing interest in the short term, that's what the 49ers did. They hoped that Trey wouldn't get hurt. He did get hurt, and now that development is pushed back a year. So it's, again, long-term, short-term. Really bad news for the 49ers' long-term plans for Lance's development. I do think he's got the mental makeup to bounce back from this, but you just got to push everything back a year. And if you're the 49ers, hope that Trey Lance gets it done starting in 2023. It's going to be a compelling saga. It already has been. But that's the next step for the 49ers. Not good in the long term, but in the short term, they obviously do have Jimmy Garoppolo, so that's where the focus moves. All right, this day will continue. I'm in Washington Square, North Beach, San Francisco. There's Russian Hill. There is St. Peter and Paul's Church. That is where Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe took their wedding pictures. Because one or both of them was divorced, the Catholic Church, though, wouldn't let them get married in the church. They got married at San Francisco City Hall. And then the San Francisco Italian Athletic Club behind me, as well as Coit Tower right there behind my shoulder. This is the most European neighborhood of San Francisco. Washington Square, North Beach. Joe DiMaggio, by the way, grew up, I think, on Taylor Street, just a few blocks away from here. Before he played for the Yankees, he played for the San Francisco Seals. Anyway, that's your trivia for the day. We'll have more content coming soon on this busy day in 49ers land.